Hello and welcome to Todd versus
BBD.
Today I'm going to be playing a blue-white control deck in Standard, and this was piloted by Jeremy Bylander at the SCG Open in Minneapolis a week and some change ago to a finals appearance. And this deck is not something we've really seen that much of in Standard lately.
No, we definitely have not.
Yeah, I've been wanting to build a deck around In Hostilities, Elspeth, and just like a bunch of card draw spells, but I couldn't really find like a good removal suite, and I think that Jeremy actually found a pretty solid one, but let's go and take a look at it and talk about it. So the main card that I missed, I think, is Devouring Light.
Yeah.
Devouring Light just never was really a constructed card when it was originally in Ravnica City of Guilds, and I played a lot of that Standard format, so when this came back, I kind of just dismissed it. I didn't really understand that, these blue-white control decks need a way to exile an opposing creature as opposed to just killing it. As you can see, every one of our removal spells except for In Hostilities exiles the creature. We have Last Breath, Devouring Light, and Banishing Light. Now, Last Breath is not really there because it exiles things. It's there because it only costs 2 mana.
Yep.
Since we don't have Azorius Charm, we don't have anything like that really to play. Personally, I think maybe Suspension Field might end up being in this slot at some point. Although you do want most of your removal spells to go to the graveyard to fuel your delve in the late game with Dig Through Time. As you can see, the way we set up the deck tech, just all of the spells are separated into their groups. We have 8 counter spells, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Nullify, and 4 Dissolve. Dissolve being the best one, but we do want a few 2-mana ones early on to help us make sure we can actually cast more than one spell per turn in the later turns of the game, as well as being able to nullify something on turn 2 if necessary. The removal spells, Last Breath, Devouring Light, Banishing Light. Banishing Light being the 4 of because it is so powerful and versatile, being able to take care of Planeswalkers, the gods from Theros, as well as other things. And then the threats, we have 2 Prognostic Sphinx and 3 Elspeth. Now, I know you thought that there may be some concerns with actually being able to close out the games, but with all the counter spells in the deck and the things like Dig Through Time, we can really set up turns where we can play our big threat and have a counterspell open. But I do understand that a deck with like 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Heroes Downfall, and maybe some ways to make a sacrifice Prognostic Sphinx like Crackling Doom.
Yeah.
We actually could get to a point where we can't win the game anymore.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a relevant concern. It's probably not going to happen that often, but there are going to be times where they kill all your Elspeths, and you're 1 Prognostic Sphinx left in their deck, and your opponent's just sitting there with 3 Crackling Dooms, just waiting for you to cast it.
Yeah. But the rest of the deck, we just have some card draw spells with Divination, Jace's Ingenuity, and Dig Through Time. Jeremy Bylander's original list played 3 Dig Through Time and 3 Jace's Ingenuity. I tried to figure out why, and the only thing I could really come up with was that the Delve is not actually that easy to hit in this deck. We don't have 4 copies of Despise. Our removal spells are Banishing Light and Devouring Light. They're not really going to the graveyard very quickly to fuel the Dig Through Times. But in my head, I was thinking, well, Dig Through Time is almost always going to cost 5 or less. And I would always rather look at the top 7 and pick 2 rather than draw 3 random ones. So I just made this quick switch here. And then last but not least, the best card in the deck, In Hostilities. Wrath effects in this format are generally pretty bad. Anger of the Gods doesn't really hit Courser, Siege Rhino, but In Hostilities takes care of everything. And if we see an uptick of things like Herald of Torment, Boon Satyr, and even Mogus's Warhound, Bestow's actually pretty good in this format, and people haven't really caught on too much to that yet.
Yep.
But Brad Nelson's 10th place deck from Minneapolis utilized 4 copies of Herald of Torment, as well as the Abzan aggro decks from the Pro Tour and the one Brian's going to be playing today. I don't know, are you playing Herald of Torment?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, Herald of Torment is very powerful, and if you don't have a way to actually deal with it, like Silence of the Believers or In Hostilities, you're going to have a bad time.
One thing that I really like about this deck is that you can play Elspeth +1 and then Devouring Light with 3 soldiers.
Yeah, there's a little bit of mini synergies in here with that. Being able to take care of Sarkin, Protector from that is pretty sweet, but the mana base is pretty straightforward, just as many dual lands as we can fit in the deck. Tranquil Cove actually pretty solid, being able to gain a life. I never thought that the Refuge's virtual reprints would actually see that much play.
Especially with Temples.
Yeah, but they are very good in 2-color decks, which I do like, because the 2-color decks don't have access to the Con Tri-land, and having access to another dual land, and it giving the upside of gaining you a life is pretty sweet. We also have 1 copy of Evolving Wilds, as to act as another dual land, as well as help get more cards in our graveyard, and 3 copies of Radiant Fountain, because I guess our mana is good enough.
Yeah, I actually have played against blue-white a number of times. I played against it twice at the Grand Prix, which I was surprised to see.
Yeah.
And between Radiant Fountain and Tranquil Cove, it was very annoying how much life they gained. Very annoying.
And I can only assume it gets worse after sideboard, which we'll get to right now. So if you're in the mood for gaining life, we have 4 copies of Nyx Fleece Ram. And this guy can be super annoying against a number of strategies. And I think I actually might be bringing him against you today, simply because almost all of your guys have like 2 to 4 power unless you invest a lot of mana or a lot of things into them.
Yep.
Nyx Fleece Ram is fantastic against things like mono red, as the life gain and being able to block give you like a dual-sided utility. 2 copies of Breemaz and 2 Wingmate Rock, because there are some other control decks in the format, and we want to get a little aggressive sometimes. Breemaz and Wingmate Rock giving you that way to punch through. Breemaz is especially great when you have access to Devouring Light or Banishing Light, because you can get rid of their blocker, get your token out of it, and the token plus Breemaz actually makes the Devouring Light only cost 1, which is pretty nice. 2 copies of Negate and a Disdainful Stroke that come in against the slower decks. An Erase, I guess, as a concession to Jeskai Ascendancy, as I lost to it on camera, so I kind of want to play a second one in my decks. A Fated Retribution against all the Planeswalker heavy mid-range decks. A Resolute Archangel against Jeskai or Mono Red. Another Devouring Light against the mid-range decks, and I think that is about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of life gain in the sideboard. So.
Yeah, I mean, this deck gains a lot of incremental life with things like the lands and the Nyx Fleece Ram and the Wingmate Rock and the Resolute Archangel, and I can only assume that for aggressive decks, it's just not a great time, right? Like, normally you only have to deal 20 damage to your opponent, but when you have to deal like 25, sometimes 30, maybe even 45 if you have Resolute Archangel. So, yeah, it can really add up. But anyway, guys, that is Blue White Control by Jeremy Bylander from the SCG Minneapolis Open. We'll get to Brian's deck tech, and then we'll get to battle.